We are back working on the 99 Chevy K3500 four-wheel drive, and we are going to be replacing the lower ball joints. We got to take a bunch of stuff off to get to that ball joint before we can change it. We got to take this tie rod end out. I'll have to pop this upper ball joint off. Take this thing off. Take this shock off. The brake's going to come off. The hub's going to come off, and then the whole spindle is going to come off. All that's got to come off before we can even attempt to change that ball joint. We're in the process of taking off this hub, and I got the caliper off with the brakes. I got them sitting up here on the upper A-arm for now. On the back side of this hub are these 4 bolts that are 15 millimeter, and they were in there pretty good, but we was able to break those loose. Once those break loose, there's a nut on the front side, this nut here, that holds the CV axle in. It's a 36 millimeter nut. Take that off, and then I just gave this thing a good yank, 2 or 3 good yanks. This thing came off. Up here you'll see this clip. We're just going to pull this clip up like this. This thing should come off. Slight tug. That'll come off. And we're just going to feed it back down through here. Feed it underneath the brake line like this. Off of here. And now, we should be able to take this thing right off like that. So we are getting ready to take off this nut here for the upper A-arm. And down here, there's a nut too. I'll move back up here for a second. Before we can take this nut out, there's going to be a key, a cotter pin like this that you got to take out. Once you take that out, then we're going to take a 1 and a 1/16 socket with a breaker bar. We're going to break it loose. Now on the bottom, it's got that same cotter pin in it like this. You got to take out before you can take that nut off. And it uses the same socket. It's the 1 and a 1/16 socket. But the difference is, on mine, the pin broke off inside. So you can't see it down here, but the pins broke off. So I'm going to take the impact wrench or impact socket, put this on the impact socket, and just buzz that thing off there. On this top one, we can't get an impact socket in there, so we'll have to just put that socket onto a breaker bar and just go ahead and break it off by hand. We got the nut on the upper A-arm. We got it loosened. Now let's scoot it back on by hand. And we did the same thing to the bottom. You see me do that with the impact. And now we're going to take this guy right here. This is called a pickle fork. We're going to slide it in like this. And we're going to take a hammer and start beating this thing and driving this thing in. As it drives it in, it's going to pop this bolt, this A-arm up out of this spindle. We got the nut on there so it doesn't go flying out, which I don't think it will, but once we get it loose, we'll take this nut off and bolt the rest of the way out. So as you can see here, this ball joint is broken loose. You can see it moving here. Well, it's not moving too much, but it's broke loose. And you figure as soon as I turned the camera off, it broke loose. But I just kept that pickle fork and I got it, pulled it back out. And I think I might have had it in like this. And I went around and turned around like this and put it back in and started driving it in. And it took about 10 hits. And once it got into about here, you know, it was just gone and then it just popped loose. But figure as soon as I turned the camera off, it breaks loose. So we got that nut still on the bottom up in here, holding that in place, which is all right. We're going to try the bottom now. Same thing. We're going to take the pickle fork. We're going to take a hammer and we're going to beat it and see if we can break that one loose also. I got my pickle fork jammed in there and I think it's ready to pop. See if I can get this on camera of me knocking this lower ball joint out of the spindle and taking the spindle off. There's the spindle off. We finally got that bottom one knocked out of there. I got my pickle fork stuck on the ball joint, but I'll beat that off here in a second. So I went out and bought this tool here. This is called a ball joint remover tool or something. I got it set up with this cup down here going around the ball joint, and then the shaft coming down on top of the ball joint. Had to loosen my A-arm and push my A-arm out of the way to get my setup here. I was going to use this impact, see if we can grab this ball joint out of here. There's your old ball joint there. Before I took this ball joint out, I did take this blue torch and I went around the outside and got it heated up. Not a long time, maybe 2 minutes, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Just got it warm, and I never hit it with the impact. It drove it right out. So now we're gonna take a wire brush. We're gonna clean up the top of this, and we gotta clean up the bottom where it's gonna seat because it's gonna have grime and stuff. You wanna make sure that bottom's cleaned up really good, or else it won't seat right. And then inside the center, in this hole here, let's take a file and go down in there, and there's going to be a lip from like buildup of grease and stuff. And go ahead and take about 2 or 3 minutes and get all that cleaned out there. If you can take a wire brush and get down inside there, this one won't fit, but a smaller wire brush would work too. Okay, so we're getting ready to put this ball joint back in. This is my new ball joint here. And there's a hole right there for a grease zerk. And there's a little cutout right here in the side of the lower A-arm. So you want to line that hole up so it comes up through with that cutout so you can put your grease zerk in there. And we're just going to be basically turning this whole system around using this thing here that goes over top and sets right on the edge of that lip. And putting this thing on and then driving it up in. So I'm going to get this all set up, and then we'll push this ball joint back up into the A-arm. So my air impact wasn't doing the job for me, so I went and picked up one of these. Now this thing cranks out 450 foot-pounds of torque, and my air impact only pushes out 250 foot-pounds of torque. So hopefully this thing's going to press this ball joint the rest of the way in. Let's find out. This ball joint is pressed in, and you can see the gap here. It's pretty much tight. It isn't pretty much, it is tight the whole way around. So we're ready to continue, get this spindle put back on and get everything else put together. So once this ball joint is pressed in, this job is pretty much done. Now we just got to reassemble everything. So take the spindle, put the spindle on here, put this castle nut on, torque it down, put the rotor back on here into this axle, put your axle nut on, torque it back down. Upper A-arm, you put it on. It's not on mine because I've got one ordered. So I'm going to replace the whole A-arm, the ball joints, the bushings, everything. It's all coming as one piece. So whenever that comes, I'll put that on, drop the upper ball joint in, tighten it down. And then the last thing you'll do is tie rod, put that on, tighten the nut on it. Then that should do it on this 99 K3500 dually.